Hola, bon dia, alegria. Munson here from expatsportugal.com with the Good Morning Portugal show. And you know, the way I say that to you, hola, bon dia, alegria, somebody commented on YouTube yesterday that I sound like a villager from the north of Portugal. And I'm going to take that as a compliment. It is Ask Anything About Portugal Day today, hashtag AAAP. The doc will be here. Oh, look, he's here in the comments already. Bon dia, alegria de la ria. And he will be here after my next guest on the show, a familiar face, Paul from Fiduciary Wealth Management in Gibraltar, I believe, this morning. How are you, Paul?
Very well, thank you, Carl. And you?
Pretty good, pretty good. Exciting times in the world economy and the heady world of money and finance. How's that treating you?
Well, not so much alegria as you, but hey, I'm hoping for a bit of alegria at some point in the future. No, I think, the news headlines are dominated by the G7 agreeing, an outline agreement that they're going to have set a minimum corporate tax rate of 15%. It's been rolled out now to the G20, and I think we might see by the end of the year a broad agreement on, minimal, a non-compete on corporate tax, which will be interesting to see how that is rolled out, because of course a lot of small countries and jurisdictions, Ireland being one of them, and they've already indicated that they're not supportive of this move. Increasing the corporate tax rate from 12.5 to 15, makes them less competitive.
Yes.
But the important thing to note is the 15% corporate tax rate. The intention is not to apply it across the board. It's for multinational companies that generate turnover. I think it is of 700 million. But anyway, that's an interesting development. See how it goes. But someone has to pay for the lockdowns, for the pandemic and for the debt, as we continuously speak about. There'll be stealth tax and they'll find money from somewhere, but it has to be paid, and it keeps increasing as every day that goes by. The level of debt increases because the economies are not fully open.
Interesting times.
So, that's one thing. And the other thing I reckon is that this week we have US inflation data coming out.
Oh, yeah.
And the question is whether we see inflation, for the month of June, whether it's over 5% in the US or below 5. If it's over 5%, then those who believe that we are, in a hyperinflationary environment where inflation is completely out of control, will argue that US interest rates have to go up. If it's below 5, then the other camp will say that this is only transitory inflation, like the Fed profess, and that, as soon as, we have these supply chains being broken, and that's contributing to high inflation, but once normality resumes, then we are entering deflation again. So extremely interesting for the market, because it could push equity markets higher, or we could see a correction. And also, the third thing we're waiting for is we have all the gold and silver mining firms reporting their Q2 data, the results for Q2, and I think it's going to be a particularly strong month for gold and silver miners, because with the price of gold and silver at the levels that we see, and their break-even rate much lower than that, I think they'll have positive cash flows, and which filters through to the bottom line.
Mate,
So,
it's edge of the seat stuff, isn't it? Edge of the seat stuff financially at the moment.
Global corporate tax rate of 15, inflation data, and gold and silver miners reporting their quarterly, their Q2, profit season. Yeah. So those are the three.
Yeah, we got Paul for a few more minutes. Any quickie finance and money questions, just send them in, stick them in the comments. Let's say hello to a few people, see if there's any questions there already. And we can see Jim in Baltimore just sent our draft D7 application to Gilda and team. I need a nap. Yes, feeling the weight of Portuguese bureaucracy there. A well-deserved nap for you, Jim. Go for it. Phil Cooklin enjoying that news from Jim. Whoop, whoop. Exciting times. Hola, bon dia, alegria. Jacqueline CDM is here. Bon dia, todos from the Silver Coast this morning. That's where I'm broadcasting live from the hills of Caldas Terrena. Bon dia, alegria de la Ria. We've heard from the doc already, and he'll be here to talk about, medical point of view, perspective well-being. We're talking about financial well-being with Paul for the moment. Who is this Andy Thomson you are expecting, Carl? Stop taking the P. I didn't mean to. Did I call you Will Thompson or something like that, I wonder? Good morning all from Portuglish. Good morning to you, Andy. He's making up for lost time on Facebook, that's for sure. Bon dia from Amsterdam. Matthias Lanushny is here this morning. Jerry Lawler's in this morning. Hey, Jerry, well done, Jim, and perfectly okay to start practicing your siesta techniques. Jerry might have a few tips to share with you by the sound of it. Now that crypto has flopped, what? Do you see any drop in value in TSMC? What is he talking about there, Paul?
I don't know. Is it Taiwan Semiconductors? I don't know. What is TSMC?
And I think that's overstating it a bit, that crypto has flopped. Crypto has gone through one of its downturns, I think, but as I understood it, it was on the up. And there was an interesting confiscation of Bitcoin yesterday, I think in London possibly. Did that make it to your financial screens yesterday, Paul?
No, I haven't seen that. What happened there?
I only heard it flash past me ears, one ear and out the other yesterday. But there was a Bitcoin swoop of some sort of fraud thing, which is only to be expected, I think, in the life cycle and evolution of cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. But you're gonna have to tell us what you mean there by TSMC. Jim's appreciating the support from everybody. And yes, there he goes, off for a well-earned nap after that. And I do apologize. I have taken the P. It is Thompson with a P. Let's make that absolutely clear right now. And yes, absolutely, Taiwan Semiconductor Company. Why would there be a link between the crypto crash and Taiwan Semiconductors, which was one of your previously, right?
I don't see any links whatsoever, to be honest.
Okay.
I think, we're seeing a massive shortage of semiconductors, and they haven't got the capacity to build the plants that build the chips. So I think this supply-demand imbalance will continue for the foreseeable future, next 2 years. And I think semiconductors are going to do really well. And Taiwan Semiconductors, have a market share of over 50%, and they are very well placed to capitalize on this chip shortage. So no links that I can see to crypto.
Undaunted. It's an entirely different technology, isn't it? The mining of crypto and the creation of semiconductors, I think there. Good morning from a slightly chilly Suffolk this morning. Good morning to you, Bearders22. And a bon dia from top of the morning to you in sunny Dublin this morning, Carla Freeman. Ben Austin is here. Hello, Ben. Bon dia from Parma, Italy. They're all over the world this morning, Paul. I would like to ask Paul what he thinks the fastest growing market is today. From a young man, a young investor there.
What's the fastest growing market? Today, I'm not a day trader. I look at the fundamentals and long-term trends and macro.
Yes.
In a market as volatile as this, with volatility, you just look at palladium and some of the industrial metals, and it's year to date they're going up 30%. Volatility of 30 up and down. I think daily trends don't worry me too much. We're looking at the longer term, because then you have to go into technical analysis and so on. And our clients are retirees and are looking at long-term situation. So I'm really sorry, Ben, but I'm not well placed to answer that question.
Yes,
I'm not young enough.
He's a long-term guy, and not a young hothead in the markets there.
Exactly.
Yes, and no slur intended there. Jerry's saying, yeah, the rest of us got the P joke. I'm a bit slow on the uptake this morning, obviously. George is here, bon dia. Khadija Anderson in North of Portugal, bon dia todos. Sejas Caminha presenta. Crypto miners apparently and are selling their hardware. Oh, I see, flooding the tech market with low-value products. Okay, well, let's keep an eye on that. And the listener is here as well. Recipe of the day. And I don't know why we haven't done this before, but we have got tomato rice Portuguese style, like Grandma used to make from Alyssa. Again, no slur intended there, that she cooks like a grandma. It's a good thing in Portugal. So tell us about this webinar that we've got tomorrow night, Paul. Something a little bit special of particular interest to the UK investor, right?
Yeah, we've got this guy from a company, Atmos, which is a private equity firm, has a majority stake with, they set up Atmos Wealth about, I don't know, under 10 years ago, and they've gone into the market, and it's been supported by, as I said, private equity firm, by a large private equity firm. They've pumped in a lot of money, and they've just gone in and bought insurance providers, mainly in the UK, but ones which are of a global scale. So they bought Generali, and they've just acquired Quilter, and Quilter was part of another Royal Scandia before it was, spun off. So they're quite big firms, and major play in the market for tax wrappers and insurance products. Okay. So I know James for a number of years. He used to work at AXA before he was poached and employed by Atmos, and now he's head of European business sales, I think. And we're going to be talking about a tax-efficient product for Portugal. So it's very relevant for people who are tax resident in Portugal.
Okay.
Mainly Brits and Europeans, I have to say. Yeah. Because unfortunately, for this product in particular, it's not open to US nationals, sadly. But when we next host a seminar, we'll try and see how we can bring people in that can add value also for our US-based subscribers.
All right. So point taken, Colin. I will personally get a link to you for that, so you didn't miss out on that one. I think that's of particular interest to you and Hakeem possibly there. So I will make sure. I mean, you can see my emails on the screen there. If you want to make sure you've definitely got your seat at that presentation, it's essentially a life assurance product / investment product, right?
It's a life insurance product for Portugal, which is extremely tax efficient. Yeah. And by investing in the product, provided you keep the assets for a period of time, then the effective tax rate is very, very low.
Okay.
So it has a number of benefits, but I will let James elaborate on that tomorrow, and he will explain in greater detail what it is and how it can be tax advantageous.
7:30 tomorrow night for that one. Excellent. And make sure you book your place on that. Email me, carl@expatsportugal.com, if you absolutely want to make sure you're going to be there, and I'll make sure that happens. Okay, anything else you want to say on that? Because there are a few more comments coming in about the markets and investments.
Well, I think the market, as I said, it's delicately poised, because you can go in different ways. It depends on how the data comes in. The market is very, very volatile right now. Everyone is on the edge of their seats. Yes. Inflation, deflation, equity markets expensively priced, not expensively priced, strong rebound, the rebound hasn't got enough legs, and, everyone has a view. It's a very difficult market to read. It's very, very interesting. But the three things for now, forget the corporate tax rate, is the inflation data. I think our eyes should be firmly focused on US inflation data, because that will have a ripple effect on the global markets. Yes. And of course, it'll be interesting to see when the reporting season gets underway for silver and gold miners, what their profits are for Q2. I think they're going to be really strong, and that could be, a coil and we'll see a big surge in. That's what I hope in gold and silver prices, because I think they're fundamentally extremely undervalued.
Yes, well, Fiona and Simon are saying here, and I think you're in agreement with this, metals seem a safe haven in uncertain times. I mean, it was ever thus, right? It was ever thus. People go to gold, don't they, when they're feeling a little bit shaky, and have that kind of investment, which is the most tangible of investments, really, isn't it? I've been managing my investments for the past 3 years, and in my opinion, the FTSE still has some decent growth still to come. I'm less confident about the Dow than NASDAQ.
I would agree with that sentiment. Remember, the FTSE is a commodity-based index predominantly, because the firms that are called in the FTSE, there's a heavy weighting towards commodities. So if you're positive on commodities, then FTSE will outperform. The other indices are expensive. It might go higher, but they're extremely overvalued. But I think the FTSE still has some potential upside because of the correlation, the positive correlation with industrial metals and mining.
Got legs, as you mentioned earlier on. Matthias, we'll come back to that when the doc's here. A paint therapy. Have you ever tried that, Paul? Have you ever done any art therapy?
No, but I'd be interested to know the benefits of paint therapy. Is it like they just paint you, or?
Oh, no, you don't get painted. Well, as far as I'm aware. Obviously, that's where you went. That's where your mind went. You would like to be painted.
I wouldn't mind to be painted. Just close my eyes and just relax. If it helps, why not?
I think I'd find that quite relaxing. You and me both there then. Bon dia again from the other. This is the Thomson without the P. Apologies for lashing out at you yesterday, Carl. Frayed nerves, some bad news personally. Wish the Great Awakening would hurry up and get there. Absolutely forgotten Will Thomson there. And we always lash out on the ones we love, don't we? And then we'll come back to that as well, because that's the theme, well-being in these crazy times. That's what the doc's going to be talking about in a few minutes. How good an investment do you think then? Final money question on this, the Ask Anything About Portugal Wednesday. Paul Correa from Fiduciary Wealth Management here, doc to follow soon. And a recipe today. And from Hank's Captain's Log later on. Hank isn't on these comments because he's in Portugal and I have word from him. But anyway, last money question. How good an investment do you think property is in Portugal over the next 10 years in comparison to other investments? So property in Portugal, I mean, it's been pretty much unaffected by the pandemic, it would appear, at the high end.
I'm not an expert. I'm not a real estate expert, so it's very difficult to answer Gary's question. But I do think that because of the influx of foreign nationals into Portugal in the last few years, attracted by the non-habitual residency regime and those visa programs, golden visa and so on, I think there's been a lot of investment into property, and we've seen property prices, I understand, in Estoril and the Lisbon area having increased quite significantly. Whether they can maintain that over the next 10 years is a difficult one. It depends on interest rates, I would imagine. I don't see European interest rates going higher anytime soon.
Okay.
So long as they remain anchored at zero, then property surely could be an interesting proposition, from a capital appreciation and potentially also from a yield perspective, from a rental yield. So, I'm not an expert, but I think the macroeconomic conditions could be supportive for property.
All right, very good. Thank you, Paul. Apparently no paint is involved from Matthias. We will find out more from Matthias, but Portuguese Andy got painted in chocolate body paint once. That's more the sort of thing you're thinking about, I think, isn't it, Paul?
Yeah, exactly. That.
All right. See you tomorrow night then, 7:30 for the webinar of particular interest to UK investors and people who want to maximize their tax efficiency. I think did you call them tax wrapper products?
It's another name for the same thing. I would say, if I can just emphasize again, it's for non-US, but not just specifically for UK. So it's any other nationality, but unfortunately it's closed to US investors, or US nationals rather. And for no particular reason other than because the tax authorities in the US are so strict on these things that most providers just shy away from making it available to US nationals, even if they've left US shores.
Especially.
But the product is just a tax efficient, bond. But they also use the language wise they use the words tax wrapper. It's just a insurance based product which is tax efficient.
Where my mind went with that, with tax wrappers, there's a whole sort of seam of a sort of a musical genre of tax wrapping, isn't there? Kanye Invest could be one such artist who's into tax wrapping. Anyway, Paul, on that note, on that dreadful, poorly humorous note there, thank you very much. Always great fun to talk to you. Have a great day in Gibraltar, and we'll see you tomorrow evening.
Thank you, Carl. Take care. Cheers.
Ciao. Bye for now. Bye for now. Release as well. Ciao. There he goes. It is Ask Anything About Portugal Wednesday, and you'll see Paul from Fiduciary Wealth Management once a month, where you can ask about those investment things, investing in your wealth. Here's the man whereby we can invest in our health. See what I did there, Doc?
Yeah, very good.
Seamless. Seamless.
I'll forgive you the misspelling of my name.
Where is that in the sleeve notes, as it were, in the promotional stuff?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's funny because you can tell me off twice because I cut and pasted it from a previous show. So I made the same mistake twice. I will put that right. Those little things can turn into big things if not dealt with and nipped in the bud. It's all good. How are you, sir?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Yeah, well, I'm good except too much information. I've got an ingrowing toenail infected, so I had to go to the doctor, emergency appointment, get the nurse to deal with it. And I have another longer term orthopedic issue, which so I finally, after 2 years, got a request to go for a pre-surgery outpatient appointment in the UK with a week's notice. So I said, well, yeah, I'm not going to make that. So I said, please ring me back and I'll explain what's going on. And so they didn't ring me back, and they just sent me one with a month's notice. So I finally got hold of the consultant secretary and said, look, I'm in Portugal. And in the meantime, I've managed to get my GP in Portugal to refer me. And the waiting times are much better. Hi, Fiona and Simon. Much better than the UK. So I reckon I'll probably get surgery early part of next year in Coimbra. So yeah, there we go.
Yes, if you've got a week, I mean, that doesn't include quarantine or anything, does it? That would not have worked. Very interesting, and a long way to go for a toenail. But perhaps enough of toenails this morning. But thank you about updating us on your particular situation. Do you find when you go for appointments in Portugal and they see Dr. Thomson, does that change things at all?
No, I mean, obviously they understand that I understand a bit better, and the ongoing problem with that is that when they think you understand more, and they're probably right, they often overestimate what you understand, and so they don't give you as much information as perhaps they should. So this has happened to me before. I'm trying to think when. I had when I had a coronary artery angiogram a few years ago, and they didn't tell me that I shouldn't walk upstairs after I had it done because they had to go in through the artery in my groin. So there's a huge plug to stop me bleeding out after the operation. And so I did walk upstairs that evening and promptly ended up with a huge hematoma in my thigh, which was A, very painful, and B, quite disabling for a few days. Yeah.
Yikes! Oh my goodness! Right. Okay.
They just assumed I knew, because
yes, I guess yes.
I'd know all the post cardiac issues, which I didn't. So there.
Amazing. Well, I think we all feel we know a lot more about you now, which is very good from a bonding point of view. Excellent. First question on this: Ask Anything About Portugal Wednesday. Always great when the doc's here. So there is, there's a medical angle here, of course, from his work as a GP in UK formerly. But I thought we might look at well-being today. We'll come back to you in just a moment, Matthias. But crazy times. I mean, we could go into some of this pandemic stuff, as we've often done. But I think you can go to other places for arguments about that sort of thing. Whether people are wanting to lift off, lockdown, whatever they want to do, if they want to wear masks, not wear masks, there is a universal theme developing here. I think that some people are getting a bit anxious, a bit testy. It's a difficult time for humanity. So I thought we might have a little bit of an emphasis on well-being, and you very kindly agreed to do that as well. So we'll interweave that. But first, AAAP question. As it is asked anything about Portugal, I'm curious, says Matthias, if I'll be able to start a Liebsche and Bracht paint therapy. Oh, I read that as paint. That completely changed the conversation. I'm so sorry, Matthias. Pain therapy practice in Portugal. You should have said you did, and I misread it. I am a certified, and that's why you said later on, nothing. No, not pain. I am certified by the Liebsche and Bracht organization in Germany, but don't have a background in the healthcare. Here in Netherlands, I can, as it is classified as an alternative medicine. I mean, what's the way to integrate into the medical system in Portugal there, Doc?
There's a question. So, although I'm extremely open for certainly for a medical or a practitioner or an ex-practitioner to alternative therapies, that's a modality I haven't heard of. However, Portugal is very open to alternative and complementary therapies, as far as I can see.
Yeah.
And there are a couple of things that I would say go in your favour. The first is, of course, the fact that we are still together in the EU in Portugal and the Netherlands. So there is a free movement of goods and services. So I suspect it would be potentially unlawful for Portugal to stop you doing in Portugal anything that you're allowed to do in the Netherlands. I may not be correct in that, but that's an angle to look at. The other thing is that I assume this is to treat pain and not treat other things. And so if it's to treat pain and it's not that there's no potential harmful side effects, I suspect you're not going to have a problem. It's just a matter of, I guess, registering with the AT and making sure that the state gets its cut.
That's the main thing, isn't it? Money first, regulation second, maybe. And what I've done here for you, Matthias, is we had a great guest on last week from To Us Sold, because there were a couple of jobs going for a French speaker and an English speaker also needing to speak Portuguese for this wonderful website, To Us. We got the backstory on it, and you might want to start there. I think they'll be very helpful to you as well. And for anybody who wants to find out more about that, Matthias has also put in his link to the work that's being done by Liebsche Bracht there. And for anyone in pain, obviously, you're going to be looking anywhere, aren't you, for relief? And that might be a good place to do so. So thank you, Matthias. Good to make your acquaintance. Thank you for being here. And sorry I went off in the wrong direction with the whole no pain, he said earlier on, which prompted Andy, the other Andy, Portuguese Andy, to say I got painted in chocolate body paint once, which it turns out to be a completely inappropriate and unconnected statement. But a question for you, Andy, have you similarly been painted in chocolate body paint? I didn't know such thing existed, right?
I know chocolate body paint exists, and I have actually purchased it as a gift for someone else in the past. Unfortunately, I haven't experienced the use of it firsthand. So,
unfortunately, you say.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah.
Well, okay. So if you felt Doc has given you value this year via this slot on the show, there's a Christmas or birthday present idea for him. Some nice chocolate body paint, gift wrapped. And any preference, Doc? White, milk, or dark chocolate for you?
Oh, definitely plain. It has to be plain.
Okay, a man of great taste and distinction there. Going a little bit back to this, to the finance stuff introduced by Paul. Scrap, silver, gold, even copper is going to see a big increase in the near future. Hoard your scrap, which is quite an interesting turn of phrase, isn't it? Hoard your scrap. Property investment isn't for the short term. You know you've got to know when to hold them. I think know when to fold them. Know when to walk away. Yeah, know when to run. Join in if you know the words. I'm covered in paint, not chocolate. I suspect, Gary, they're getting up at 5 o'clock because we found that yesterday. Oh, yeah, we were talking yesterday, Doc, about what time people get up. And I suppose more importantly, in terms of the well-being conversation at the moment, that people can remain bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, positive, and ready for life, despite some of the external circumstances. What's a good night's sleep in your view? How many hours?
It varies. It really varies. As a teenager, a good night's sleep for me was somewhere between 12 and 14, preferably starting at 2 in the morning and finishing at about 4 in the afternoon. Of course, that's common. But during my working life, I got used to very little sleep, but I don't think that was particularly healthy for me. However, now I'm often up late for lots of reasons, but I can go to sleep at midnight and I will wake up naturally at 5 or 6 and be ready for everything. But some people I know need 10 hours and still need 10 hours at our age. So I think it's very variable. I think there are a number of important things. The first is that you can get an uninterrupted night's sleep. If you can't, there are a number of reasons why that may be, but an uninterrupted night's sleep is important. That you can fall asleep reasonably quickly, and that you then sleep until you naturally wake up. And I think those are the most important things.
Interesting. That's a great way of looking at it. Absolutely brilliant. Thank you. And it was very interesting to hear people sleeping for 4 hours, some people, and others obviously needing a bit more. And those newly retired people who really want to feel the benefit of not being disturbed by an alarm clock. And, that for the first few weeks, months of their retirement, they are getting up when they're getting up, and that's all there is to it. Curtains firmly drawn. So thanks for that, Doc. And we'll come back to other stuff about how to cope at the moment, because clearly there must be people going to their doctors at the moment saying, I'm just struggling with uncertainty and anxiety. And even there is as there is with all things ultimately, eventually, I suppose, this a recognized condition, isn't there, of COVID-related anxiety. So we'll come back to that. A few greetings for you and a few more investment things. At some point, there's going to be inflation. House prices will fall in value. They will be begging you to lend money. The banks, that is, I guess. Debt even seems like an investment at that point. Fiona and Simon, it's funny, isn't it? Those old enough to see these cycles coming and going, of course, will recognise what you're saying. Bon dia, Mr. Thomson from Andy.
Hi, Andrew.
Morning from Gary, and a greeting from Fiona and Simon as well. Ron says, I have a friend looking for information on marinas and living aboard a sailboat in the Algarve or anywhere in Portugal. Obrigado. And Jerry said this actually, for a country with so many waterways, beautiful lakes, reservoirs, river beaches, and of course a complete Atlantic front. Sailing is not that well represented in this country. It would appear, unless we just don't know about it from an expat point of view. Do you think otherwise?
Well, I may be wrong. I'm a great fan of sailing, and if I hadn't had a stroke, I suspect if I'd managed to retire at this age, I would probably be living on a sailboat. But there are good marinas along the Algarve and less so on the Atlantic coast. But along the Algarve, you've got, the ones that I know of, you've got Vilamora, you've got Albufeira, you've got Portimao. I'm not sure if there's any further west, but I suspect that there might be one somewhere around near Sagres. I don't know. There are certainly more to the east, but I don't know them. And Vilamora tends to be almost a sort of millionaire's playground, but the others are not so much. And certainly there are people living aboard sailboats in Vilamora and in Portimao and Albufeira.
Sounds doable then. Thank you for that, Doc. I suppose that the complaint I have, or I'm articulating on behalf of others, is there seems to be a lack of boats on these inland water features, if you like, on the Balajanes and on the river beaches. And maybe that's a good thing if you're trying to relax at a river beach and there's not.
Yeah, the rivers tend to be fairly shallow and have a lot of cataracts and waterfalls, so they're not particularly well navigable. Even the what's the one at Coimbra, the Mondego. There are a lot of area you couldn't sail up to Coimbra, even though the river's fairly wide. So.
Rowing is your best opportunity, and of course, I think you've mentioned there is a boat club and rowing club there, isn't there? Yeah. Somebody I've got for you there, Ron, is Sarah Faj. From our, and yes, Jerry, thank you for that. I've put a contact details in the comments there, and it's Sarah Faj, one of our Ask Our Expats team. When I've spoken to her, she has spoken to me from the deck of her boat in the Algarve, and she's over towards Spain, and it looks like a very enviable, cool, glamorous lifestyle that she leads on the boat there. So she could be somebody your friend could talk to there. Ron, I hope that's of some help this morning. Portuguese Andy, I've learned of a great private health plan, which I'm going to do, €132 annually. Wow, that will make Americans just won't believe you that you can get a health plan for €132 for the whole year. I mean, that sounds like a monthly premium that some people are paying, but annually, maybe you could send me the details. And that's company Luciadas there. Thank you for that, Andy. A doctor not following another doctor's orders. Now, where have I seen this before? Oh, yes, doctors. There's Joel with the characteristic sense of humor that we have become used to. Morning to you, Joel. Be careful which alternative treatments you mentioned, lol. Talking from bitter pain experience there. Okay, Matthias, we've got your link. That's fantastic. Yes, saw the video with Manuel Reyes. Yes, talk to Manuel, definitely. Is it feasible you can grow out of hay fever? So my boy is struggling with this at the moment. Hay fever time, isn't it, Doc? I still suffer in the summer, but it seems to be less and less each year. Do people grow out of it?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. I used to, oh God, my God. I went through a phase when I couldn't do some of my exams as a teenager because my hay fever was so bad. Wow. I have not suffered with hay fever now for in excess of 5 years.
Okay. All right. And did you do anything proactive with that, or did it just naturally disappear?
Just disappeared.
Great. That's good to know. There might be relief in the future, right, with that?
Yeah, definitely.
And your favorite or favored antihistamine, natural or otherwise?
My favorite antihistamine, Claritin, I think.
Funny question. What's your favorite antihistamine?
Depends why I want it. If I want it to mix with alcohol for a good time, then probably Piriton.
Remember where you heard it first. And Doc takes complete responsibility for that, not me. All right, thank you for that. And I hope that helps Bearders 22. Here with some of that wonderful Northern European sense of humour. Matthias, not offended at all by my mistaking pain for paint. I believe the removal of the chocolate paint is better than the painting itself. Yes! Who goes first? Fiona and Simon, I have been in for the last 2 years. We have just bought a 2-pot still to learn with. I'm not sure what's happening here, and help make some medicinal products. So a still, oh yeah, medicinal products. That's just brandy, isn't it? They're talking about there, or aguardent, I think. Medicinal products, yes, okay. I think we got the gist of that, Fiona and Simon. Some say, Doc, it's better to pay the cook than the doctor. And I don't know if it was if that's a sentiment you would agree with. But with a recipe like Grandma used to make here, let's bring this on the screen for just a moment, if we may, from the wonderful Alyssa Palmol, who's a friend of ours in the community here. I said, can I share this recipe? We've never done this before. We've talked about food, but we've not done recipes. And we'll I think I'll put this up on the forum later, but this is some of this lovely tomato rice that you will experience in Portugal. My mouth is watering already. I suspect yours is as well. This is a recipe from Alyssa for that. Chicken stock liquid, ground black pepper, lots of chopped garlic, I'm really mouth-watering now. Portuguese extra olive oil, 1 tin of chopped tomatoes, fresh cherry tomatoes, lots of, sweet paprika, Moroccan spices, chopped cilantro, not everyone's cup of tea, and chicken ham sliced. Chicken ham, yeah, there's a thing. Sometimes use bacon, but today fancied a change, she said when she was making this. Basmati in there. Interesting, not the Carolina rice or arroz there, and a tiny bit of rock salt. Let it cook, and voila, she says. Simple recipe, like Grandma used to make. So there you go. There's something to try, and we'll get that into the forum for you. More recipes, please. Would love to hear those, and thank you very much for that, Alyssa. What's with all these grumpy faces this morning? We've got Sean Maguire. Unless that's a slip of the finger, it can so easily happen. Just as a side note, Doc, do you know James Whale? I mean, have you heard of him?
Whale.
James Whale.
Yeah, talk radio, is he?
That's right. Well, I listened to his show of an evening, and I sent a tweet to him, quite a critical one, and turns out he quite liked it, and he's followed me on Twitter. And what started out as a complaint and me giving him a bit of a run-in, we've become the best of friends, I would like to think. He's followed me on Twitter, and he commended me for putting my own name and photograph on Twitter. Which I think I commend him for commending me, because I think that's a step that people might perhaps take. If you've got things to say on Twitter, own them, right? Like we do here. People who make comments here, we know who you are, and you say them, and that can be a much more respectful environment rather than anonymous banter. So me and James, like that. And it's such a thrill for me, I have to say. When he read out my tweet, I was like a teenager. Whoa, James! Whoa. It was great. Really nice moment last night. Okay, so back to the questions. Back to the Ask Anything About Portugal, and we're going to have a little bit of a report from Hank in a minute, who I think you know and who you may be meeting on his tour.
I'm meeting him later this evening at the Irish bar in Louviers.
Wonderful news. Let's have a look. Morning, Doc and Carl from Ian. Question about bank accounts. Friend has been living in EU for many years and has residency, but has house in UK rented out. UK bank has told her the account has to close. So people were fearing this. Sounds like it's starting to happen. Go on, Doc.
Okay, so I've got an account with one of the big four, which I haven't been asked to close yet, but then having said which, I do maintain an address in the UK. However, I also have an account with what used to be called TransferWise and is now called Wise, and it would be quite possible to have rent remitted to that account. You get a UK sort code and account number, and you can play around with the currency rates if you want to, because they're very cheap to convert. I'm a great fan. Well
said. And any of these new bank app-based banks, I think, are the way forward. Revolut, N26, Wise, as you were saying there, and then they're not the only ones. I mean, this is a developing market, and you wonder why, don't you? Why the old banks aren't keeping up, or they might be getting the last laugh. They might know exactly what they're doing, and they may just be, letting the water just drain out of the financial bath at their end, and they will all switch to apps at one day and just kill those competitors. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, it's not just about the apps, is it? I mean, you get online banking with the one I'm with, and every other one, as far as I know, you get online banking. Some of them have apps which work more or less. But they still say that they don't want you to maintain the account if you're not resident in the country, which is bonkers. It's absolute bonkers, especially if, as is the case with property, you pay your tax on the property income in the UK because that's the law, assuming you obey the law. And, that even with your resident here, you pay UK tax on UK property. Because that's the way that the dual tax arrangement with Portugal and everywhere else works.
Weird, isn't it? Because you would think the business of banks is to have people's money. And when they start writing letters to you saying, we don't want to have your money, it makes you wonder what on earth is going on. So I suspect something else is going on behind the scenes, and they've got a long view on this rather than them being killed by these new unicorn apps that are coming out.
I don't know. I think banks are like solicitors, naturally cautious people, and they, as Paul was saying earlier, in terms of dealing with US tax, US nationals, and the risk of dealing with US tax authorities. I just think the big four who are to close down people's accounts are running scared for no reason.
Interesting. And isn't it fascinating how now with some of these apps, you can actually transfer your existing old bank accounts into an open banking system. So they are prepared to share details with each other, which seems quite, although they're cautious, that seems very competitive or uncompetitive, doesn't it? Like you would think that they would want to keep their own sovereignty rather than you being able to look at all your bank accounts from one particular company's app. What's that about?
Well, I think that what happened was that started a long time ago when you got online account packages that were linking into your bank account. And so if those account packages, and QuickBooks, I think, was the first one. So with QuickBooks, it got to the stage where you could link directly into your account, various accounts. And once that happened and banks started to open their, in computer programming parlance, their APIs to customers and customers' other service providers, it was a natural and rapid extension to this sort of open banking platform. And I think the banks pretty quickly realized that if they didn't get on board, that they would lose customers.
Okay, so they were forced to do it. Going back to who was that who was asking before? Ron, I believe. Forgive me if it wasn't. Yeah, it was Ron. And Lagos has a huge marina, says Bearders 22. Jerry was referring to the thing that I was reporting that I thought Jerry had said. He was actually referring to river sailing, small dinghy stuff, rather than some of the bigger boats you're going to see on the coast.
Rather than dingy, in fact.
Small dingy stuff. It doesn't sound very attractive, does it? East of Leal is fishing boat stuff as well, says a Portuguese Andy there. And you've got the link for Sarah Faj there, Ron. €11 a month for that health plan. What would you get for that, I wonder? Lee McGrady, good morning, people. Sat in traffic. Nightmare. That's Lisbon life for you. Portuguese, is that a discount plan or a medical insurance plan? Good question, Mr. Lawler. I love the water. Portugal's RIAs look amazing. They are. I try an inflatable Suba board. Is that right? That sounds like a Japanese food to me. For exploring, they're great and becoming popular. So the inflatable Suba boards, that's something to watch out for if you like messing about on the water. My colleague exercised and trained himself out of asthma. There's another approach there. Regarding allergies, Matthias is giving us a lot of value this morning. AFAIK has a lot to do with processed food. So eating more fruit or vegetables from your quinta in Portugal should help in a way. And yes, I think eating sort of processed pollen, if you like, because Garvo mentioned eating local honey. These are all going to be good things to do. And I imagine there's a fruit and veg connection there in terms of how those things flower and how they proliferate. Ubi omenum, bon dia, gente, from Ubi. I was suffering, says Khadija, for some bad issues, joint pain and some others. Changed my diet and it all went away. You are what you eat. So hopefully what we shared before isn't too acidic. I mean, the thing about food as well, it's not just what you eat. I think it's how it's cooked as well. Because the sweetest, on paper, worst thing for you, made by your loving grandmother or mother, to be very sexist in a domestic point of view here, is some of the best medicine, I would say. Even if on paper, like I say, even if it's full of sugar, when grandma makes it for you and gives it to you and it's full of love, that is good for your soul, I would say. Would you agree, Doc? I know that's not a very medical point of view, is it?
Well, I think it has a fair amount to do with it. I wouldn't go as far as perhaps you do, but I think it's important.
Who would? Let's face it. Colin Richardson, I got hay fever for just 1 year. I had the same thing happen to me, Colin. I woke up one morning, I couldn't open my eyes. It's really uncomfortable, isn't it? Was in Butlin's Minehead, surrounded by English roses. What a childhood memory. God bless your Minehead. God bless your Butlins. But I hope that didn't spoil your holiday too much, and that you were able to take part in the Knobbly Knees competition. Ian Turner, highly recommend Revolut. 35 years in banking. I've never seen anything better. Okay, that's from an insider there. Andy's going to find out more about that insurance plan. Make sure he hasn't been sold an insurance lemon there. Slip of the finger makes you grumpy. Now that's funny. Yes, very good, Carvo. Trust you. We have a little Blue Peter sailing dinghy and Blue Peter sailing dinghy and a kayak for Fiona and Simon. Like I was told, I was getting a free carpet clean. Turns out a friend stitched me up with a. I think it's a bit of a soft touch for the salespeople, isn't he? Andy Portuglish. Personally, I use Monzo. There's another name, but wasn't sure if it would work. Hadn't thought of Revolut. First Direct is an online bank as well, says Andy. Santa, I think quite a lot of bank talk now. It always happens, doesn't it? Santander UK and First Direct are happy to keep existing accounts from Portugal, but no new account opening. Thank you for that, Colin. That's great. Ian says, Bearders, use Revolut for currency transfers to Portugal and consider Spartan FX, I have to say as well, and pay some bills in currency. I've used Revolut as far away as India and Sri Lanka. I love Revolut personally. Starling Bank told me it would close the account when I changed my address to Portugal. My goodness. Revolut deposits are protected by up to £85,000 per person per bank by the FSCS. That's good to know. 80 to 90% of personal bank accounts make the bank's minimal profit. So they're glad to offload. Yeah. I suppose they're like everything. They're working on an 80-20 as well, aren't they? Hi, Doc. Just returned from UK, having seen my GP and dermatologist in UK. Now on waiting list for surgery at St Thomas, and waiting list is 2 to 3 months. Had serious difficulty in getting access to GP here in my region due to lack of doctors and restraints with COVID. Had to go privately for consultation and biopsy at COOF. That's the private hospital here. Paid privately out of my savings. Couldn't afford to pay the necessary surgery privately. I don't have private insurance. And was told the waiting list for the SNS. We've lost her at that point. So carry that on for us, please, Susan, because there may be a question at the end of that. We get full-size river cruises going up and down parts of the rivers. Is there? That's good to know. Mark Rigby, however, with almost 0% for savings and up to 18 to 30% for credit cards, it's difficult to imagine a bank not making a profit. Well said, sir. Don't forget the Finn Olympic class just had their World Championships in Porto and the pre-meet in Portimao. Okay, is that the Finnish Olympic team? Possibly they're on the way to Japan. My 17-year-old nephew became vegan 2 years ago. He went from chronic asthma to keeping the asthma pump for emergencies only. He's become a paperweight now. That's fantastic, isn't it, Anita? Thank you very much for that. Starling, that's the name of a bank. All right, so Susan, do get the rest of that question to us, if you will. We're going to very quickly report from our forum, which you can read for yourself if you join the expatsportugal.com forum. It's /community to read the forum post, including this. Just wanted to say hi from Hank. The wife and I have finished up our first week of our month-long Portugal scouting trip and are having a wonderful time. That's why he's not in the comments. He's actually here. We landed in Lisbon and spent 4 days there, and we're finishing up 4 days in Tavira. We're heading up to Leiria tomorrow to meet up with the Doc Thomson, and introduce ourselves in person. We didn't rent a car, and we've been doing ordinary people things. That's hard to believe with you, Hank and Mrs. Hank. Taking public transit everywhere, train, metro, bus, trolley, walking. It's been super easy to get around, barely an inconvenience. You read about how nice the Portuguese people are, and it's no lie. Everyone has been so nice, and I'm not just talking about the people waiting on us. We have spent time in grocery stores, visiting malls, and just trying to do everyday people stuff, and the people we bumped into have just been so nice and courteous. It's amazing, really. The best word I've found so far to describe is that people are just damn civilized, just really civilized. The atmosphere is so relaxed, and people are just so, I don't know, content, easygoing, mature. It's so different than in America. It's amazing. Totally opposite. And on he goes with it, with a lovely account of his time and Mrs. Hank's time in Portugal. So welcome, Hank, and thank you for sharing that with us in the forum. So I guess you two might have a few beers this afternoon or this evening, Andy.
I think so. I mean, they do draft Guinness at this place. I have to say, it's not cheap. It's rarest hen's teeth draft Guinness in Portugal. So, but it's very well kept. It's very well served. So maybe one of those, but then it'll probably be Superboc on draft after that.
I so wish you hadn't mentioned it, because I got tomato rice on my mind. which partnered with a creamy Guinness would be pretty awesome, wouldn't it? Especially if that tomato rice had a bit of fish on top of it. Not for you, Doc. You would go for something different. Possibly a lentil burger with a tomato rice there, but what an evening. Peter Stewart, thanks. I'm not sure what for there, Peter, but we'll take it. Anyway, I know the Finn class is a type of dinghy that Ben Ainsley won 4 gold medals in. Okay, just goes to show how wrong you can be with that. Thank you for that clarification as well, Ian. I've decided that living in Portugal versus the US is humane versus inhumane. So glad we left the US. This is an increasing trend, isn't it? American folk who are so glad to be either moving here or have arrived here in Portugal. Interesting to hear those stories, and a little bit poignant and sad as well, of course, that America is in such pain at the moment for so many people. So in the last few minutes then, Doc, if we could return to this theme of what I suppose loosely described as pandemic anxiety or some of the heat people might be feeling, whatever part of the political or ideological medicinal spectrum they find themselves in relation to it, the universal experience might be a little bit of anxiety at times. What's the best thing to do?
So there are a number of important things to remember, and these are basic truths that everyone knows and everyone forgets when they're acutely stressed. So the first thing is that if you can change whatever's causing you stress, change it.
Yeah.
Deal with it. Whether it's COVID, whether are you worried that you might have been in contact? Well, go and get tested. Are you worried that people around you aren't wearing masks and you think you're at risk? Well, ask them to move or make space yourself. Because worrying about a problem, there's one thing that's absolutely true. Worrying about a problem never, ever did 1 ounce to make it any better. And it just makes you spend nervous energy getting unwell yourself. The second thing is exercise. I've been my life, as most people. I'm overweight, and I've found lots of excuses not to exercise. But I have joined a gym. I am now going every other day. I'm doing a good workout, and if I can do that with fairly, severe weakness in one side, then no one has an excuse, and I'm putting that out there. Third thing is eat healthily. It takes a little longer to cook healthily, more so than it does to go and buy a McDonald's. Thank God there aren't many McDonald's around Portugal, although there are too many. One is too many as far as I'm concerned. But cook fresh food. There's lots of it around. It's not over expensive, and eat regularly and eat well. Healthily.
Like that.
Yeah. And if you're not sleeping, go to the doctor, because actually I've never been a great fan of sleeping tablets, but I've always given people short courses of sleeping tablets when they need them, because they can break a cycle of not sleeping properly. So even 2 or 3 days, just something to help you sleep, and then that can be enough. And those simple things, they'll go a long way to helping you feel better.
Yeah, fantastic, Doc. That's great. Just a few more comments coming in about that. Glad to hear it, Doc Parabange. And this is our Growing Old Disgracefully Man, Ian, and we will be launching a little program of fitness for the retirees, expats, and the elders. Go on, Doc.
One more thing, sorry. If you're bored because you don't have a job, you've retired, you've been made redundant, you've been put on short time, or if your kids are driving you mad because they're getting bored, a new hobby, find a new interest. If you're saying, oh, I don't know what to do, Go on YouTube, look at all the things on YouTube, find something you can do, find something that isn't going to be too expensive, go for walks, get out and exercise, or find something you can do indoors cheaply. I have seen so many things on YouTube that if I was able to use both hands, oh my God, I've seen someone who can carve glass with a small handmade sandblaster, which costs him about 60 quid. 60 quid to build, and he's producing beautiful carved glass. I've seen someone doing experiments, cooling and heating using sound. I mean, just so many things on YouTube that you could just get into. Find something that interests you. There is no excuse to be bored. I don't want to hear anyone say they don't know what they're going to do.
Well said.
How I ever had time to work.
He's like a doctor and a dad there. Shut up and do something. None of this boredom business around here. Very good. And I wondered what you were going to say there. All these YouTube videos I've seen, and if only I could use both hands. But I'm glad you clarified that. Or walk, as I found myself out of shape. So walk it is. Yes, get out and about. Gardening, of course. We have a gardening Q&A every Monday at 6:15. Lots of new gardeners in there. Loving the information flow there. Lee McGrady, head gardener Lee McGrady, who might still be stuck in traffic. A real source of inspiration and information. Life is too short to be bored. Obrigado, great advice from Khadija. Thank you for that. Bearders22 has seen Ben Ainsley in Lagos Marina at the GC30. So that's completely wrong what I said about the low representation of sailing, I think, in Portugal. Scratch that. Couldn't afford to pay privately for procedure and waiting times unknown in Portugal. Was quoted private health insurance at around 140 per month. I guess people have a choice between SNS and private and PT. I have a choice between SNS and NHS. Now double jabbed, so hope travel going forward will be less stressful and expensive. Yeah, that's the problem, isn't it? So glad I have the S1 route. Well, thank you for that report, Susan.
Waiting times in Portugal. There's a fantastic resource on the SNS portal for waiting times. It tells you how long you'll wait for a first appointment, depending on whether it's urgent, priority, or routine. And then it tells you how many weeks you'll wait for the surgery on the same basis. And it tells you that per specialty in each hospital. So it's on the SNS portal. You can go and find it. Looking for it myself the other day.
Fantastic. That's good to know. Wise words. Thank you. I think that's generally about your information there this morning, Doc. And thank you for that. Barbara, very inspirational what you've shared there from Barbara in Poland. Yep, still in traffic. Oh, dear. Lee McGrady, hope that moves soon for you. Carpe diem. Quite right too, Ian. And there was one thing, of course, that you forgot, Doc. Andy. Draft Guinness in Leiria. Where? So Guinness, as originally prescribed for people in hospitals, right? Where is this? Jerry needs to know. He sounds quite shocked.
Well, if you're going to buy me a pint and meet me in the Lewis Commercial Square, we'll go. No, it's Mulligan's. It's Mulligan's. They open at 6 o'clock every evening, I think, possibly except Sunday, and they may be open Sunday. They've got draft Guinness. They've got a good range of beers. They've got some nice food. It's a small, unassuming little place. You can drive past it very easily. It's very near the Lewis Commercial Gardens. But
you'll just hear someone in the square going, "Psst, Guinness."
Yeah.
That'll be Doc luring into Mulligan's. And of course they're shut on Sunday because they'll be at church, I suspect. Gary Austin, I didn't know Hank was coming over your way. I'd have come over to meet him. I guess it's not too late for that. Yeah. And don't let them grind you down. More wisdom coming in. Bravo, Ian, on Carpe Diem. This is why we're going over time, because of this wisdom. We can't stop here. Wife and I started taking CBD oil last 2 months. I've been sleeping like a log. Go on. Point of order or...
Yeah. No, absolutely good advice. And something else I missed, sorry, as well. So I have talked about supplements before, but I think you need to be making sure you take essential fatty acids. If you eat fish more than 3 times a week, you're fine. Otherwise, look at taking essential fatty acids. Take a multivitamin and mineral supplement, even if you're eating organically. The chances are you're going to end up much of the soil is depleted. So it's cheap as chips, multivitamin and minerals. What else? Those are the only 2 supplements I would absolutely recommend for everybody.
All right, quality, very important. Read Don Quixote in the original Portuguese if bored or otherwise angst-ridden. There's a very left field, but probably very good bit of advice there. Absolutely, Andy, we're on. Carl too. Jerry, you know that's not happening for a year. I am now I've only got 358 days to go, and I'm looking forward to joining you already. Thanks, Doc. Great advice about SNS Portal. I don't think I understand what's out there. Can I private message you? Asked Susan. Of
course. Carl, put my email address up.
Go on then. What is it?
andydoc1@gmail.com.
There's only one, and there he is, andydoc1.
Jerry can email me for Guinness, and Susan can email me for SNS and anything. Anyone can email for anything. If I don't reply, then just keep harassing me, and I'll get around to you eventually.
Well, I don't know where my at button's gone, so I've had to do it like that. But there you go, andydoc1@gmail.com. You can figure that out for yourselves there. When is Doc Andy back? Doc Andy will be back here. When are you going to be here again? You're going to be here on the 2nd Wednesday of every month. So that's his residency.
2nd and 4th. 2nd and 4th, isn't it?
It is
every 2 weeks.
Yep, it's the 2nd and 4th. That's what it says in front of me, although I didn't read it like that. Second and 4th. The doc is here, and we're very grateful to you for that. Been a great session this morning. Let's see if there's anything else we need to include before we go. When someone tells me they're bored, I just say, if you are a bore and must be boring. It's a big no prisoners with Raquel. It's a big world. Time is precious. Find something that resonates with you. There is value in learning something every day. Now run along, Raquel would say to them. Olive oil as well. Eat some good olive oil. There's absolute abundance of great advice coming in. 2 right bearders, says Ian Turner. And I think that's just about it for now. Apart from Matthias. I think we've made Matthias, we've made a new friend here who says, wish I could join for that Guinness in that ear, but won't be in that area before September. I've got a feeling.
I'm here all the time.
Yes, I've got a feeling. I've got a feeling you haven't missed the deadline with the doc there, Matthias. Doc, thank you very much indeed. See you soon, mate, and have give our love, won't you? Big kiss to Hank and Mrs. Hank tonight when you guys meet up. Sounds absolutely wonderful. So, and we'll see you tomorrow. Guess who's here tomorrow? We've got Luke and Sarah. Off-gridders, legendary off-gridders in central Portugal. Really popular people. They release a video every week about their off-grid life, and they're going to be my guests tomorrow morning. So we'll see you for that. And of course, the webinar tomorrow evening with the specifically for UK investors. Take care. Bye for now. Abraços, beijinhos, hasta logo. Ciao, ciao.
Okay.